Set in the High Middle Ages, religion is obviously a big part of Crusader Kings 3. There are over 100 different faiths in the game, separated into over 30 overlying religions. Christianity and Islam take centre stage, at least in the game's main theme of the Crusades, but there are also 7 different Hinduist religions, 7 Zoroastrian faiths, 6 different Jewish faiths, 3 Taoist faiths, and a whole plethora of pagan religions. Each of these faiths have different beliefs, which are categorized into tenets, sins, virtues, and doctrines, and they also have 5 holy sites giving the players who own these sites certain bonuses. In this video, we want to explore exactly these. What was the history and meaning of these places Christians, Muslims, or Jews considered so divine and important? In Crusader Kings, when a ruler owns these places, they are granted additional stewardship, learning, development, growth, levy size, or even dread. Furthermore, going on a pilgrimage to visit these places has been buffed with a lot of flavour after the Tours and Tournaments expansion, which further emphasises their importance in the medieval world, as well as making each journey a unique experience. We aim here to give a broader context of these holy sites, placing their story into the frame of Crusader Kings' 867 and 1066 starts. For the sake of keeping this video reasonably short, and in order to dive a bit deeper into each of these places, we will for now only talk about Catholic holy sites in the game. But if there is interest in this type of video, we will surely follow up in the future with Islam, Hinduism, Judaism, or other Christian faiths as well. So be sure to follow us by subscribing to our channel and liking this video. And if you want to support us further, you can share this video with your friends or support us on Patreon. Religious historian D. Dyas opens her thesis on the dynamics of pilgrimage and holy places as follows. Human beings are physical creatures, and their interactions with the world, including in the realm of spirituality, are channeled entirely through their senses. Human engagement with sacred places, therefore, is necessarily shaped not only by belief, instruction, and group influence, but also by interior and external landscapes, and by human physiology and psychology. This social sciencey yet beautifully phrased quote is an eloquent way of saying that holy sites matter, that religion has a geographic dimension. Throughout history, being in control of a symbolically important piece of land gave rulers prestige, power, and even legitimacy or diplomatic opportunities. So whilst receiving a bonus for your faith holding a holy site in Crusader Kings 3 might seem a bit silly on first glance, some of the bonuses do make sense. For instance, controlling Jerusalem gives all followers of the faith controlling it an extra 20% monthly piety. Although it is odd to have a numerical effect on owning a place, it can be argued that religious followers become more convinced of the teachings of their religion if the central place within those teachings is controlled by them. Apart from Jerusalem, Catholicism in CK3 has Rome, Cologne, Santiago, and Canterbury assigned as holy sites. And some of their bonuses are a little harder to justify than Jerusalem's piety bonus. For instance, Cologne being in Catholic hands gives all Catholic rulers 5% more control growth, and cultural fascination progress, and owning Santiago decreases Holy Order higher cost for all Catholics by 10%. That is not to say that there is no symbolic background for the bonuses Paradox ascribes to these holy sites, just that the effects do not always translate so well into real life. However, it does give the player an interesting incentive to control these places, and from a gameplay perspective, it is worth the inclusion. The first holy site we want to talk about is famously not in Catholic hands at both starts of the game. Jerusalem, the city where according to the Bible the Christian Messiah Jesus was crucified and resurrected, is also an important Muslim holy site, as according to Muslim tradition, it is where Muhammad ascended to heaven. Jerusalem was the location of many religious wars throughout history, specifically the First, Second, Third, not the Fourth because of cheeky Dandelo, Sixth and Ninth Crusades were fought in order to gain or maintain control over the city. As already mentioned, Jerusalem gives the religion controlling it a plus 20% monthly piety bonus. This is indeed a strong buff, giving a great advantage to a significant part of Crusader Kings' world. But considering the centrality of Jerusalem within the two biggest Abrahamic religions, Jerusalem could be justified to receive an even greater bonus. For example, it could have the additional effect of rulers of the religion controlling it having higher opinions of each other. As a historic example for this suggested effect, in the Third Crusade, an unlikely alliance of Europe's most powerful Catholic leaders came together to defend their fellow brethren in the Holy Land. In 1189, Philip II of France, Richard I of England, and the Holy Roman Emperor Frederick Barbarossa temporarily paused their disputes amongst each other to travel to the Near East to battle against the Ayyubid Empire. While succeeding to save some of the Crusader states, they failed to keep Jerusalem proper. Though, interestingly enough, at the end of the Third Crusade, a treaty was set up guaranteeing the safety of both Christian and Muslim unarmed pilgrims travelling throughout the Levant. Moving away from the Levant, the main centre for Roman Catholicism is, you guessed it, Rome. The county of Roma is the third most developed county in the game, and also one of the few counties to contain 6 different baronies. Among them, we have the city of Ostia, famously Rome's port all the way since antiquity, the barony of Rome, which even contains a tiny Colosseum, and, on the other side of the river Tiber, the bishopric of Vaticano, actually representing where the Vatican lies within the modern city of Rome. When controlled by Catholics, the Vatican grants 1 extra point of stewardship and plus 10% development growth to all Catholic realms. Justifying these bonuses, rather than thinking of what Rome gave to Christian Europe in the Middle Ages, is probably easier to think about what Europe would have been without controlling Rome. As the seat of Western Christianity, Rome was the spiritual centrepiece of Europe, and also regained its political influence at least after the 8th century when the Frankish emperors entered into an alliance with the Church. The first Frankish emperor to help the Vatican was Charles Martel in 739. Some 60 years later, this alliance eventually led to the famous duality of Frankish emperors and Roman Catholic popes, beginning with the proclamation of Charlemagne as emperor in the year 800. So we see that Rome, while having experienced a sharp cultural decline in the early Middle Ages, was still an incredibly influential, religiously important place, with the Pope sending missionaries into the remotest parts of Northern and Eastern Europe to proselytize the local population. Thus, although Rome was often prey of anarchy in that time, with the lowest point probably being reached in 897, when a raging crowd exhumed the corpse of a dead Pope and put it on trial, the city somehow still continued to hold that legendary spirit of being the centre of the ancient world, evident in the fact European emperors acknowledged the necessity of being coronated emperor by the Pope in Rome. In addition to that, there just existed a long tradition of power, knowledge and spirituality in this venerable city. You can even see this in the architecture and geography of Rome. For example, the medieval Senate House stands directly upon the Tabularium, an ancient repository of archives. Apart from the Tabularium, the Pantheon, Colosseum, and Forum Romanum are just some of the few examples of ancient buildings that at least partly survived until the modern day. Rome is just so full of visible history of ruling the Occidental world that the extra development and stewardship the Christians get in the game for controlling it basically seems justified. Perhaps, like Jerusalem, it should have even more of a buff than it already does in game. Let us know what you think in the comments. Moving north, we see the next holy site of Catholicism, Cologne. The county of Cologne in western Germany lies right next to the ancient city of Aachen, and in the game also contains the city of Bonn, which served as the capital of West Germany in the Cold War. When controlled by Catholics, Cologne gives all Catholics plus 5% control growth, as well as plus 5% cultural fascination progress. Cologne is most famous for its cathedral, the Kölner Dome, a renowned monument of German Catholicism and Gothic architecture that was declared a World Heritage Site in the 1990s. It is Germany's most visited landmark, attracting an average of 20,000 people a day. The reason the Cologne Cathedral became such an important holy site can be traced back to the 12th century, when the Archbishop of Cologne, Reinald of Dassel, acquired the relics of the three kings from Frederick Barbarossa, who had taken them from the Basilica of St. Eustorgio in Milan. The relics of the three kings were believed to be the bones of the three wise men who visited Jesus after his birth to give him the gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Considering how important these biblical figures are in German-speaking Christian tradition, according to my German-speaking writers, there is even a day in early January on which groups of men dress up as them and run from door to door. It is quite fitting that their bones are supposedly lying in this important place for German Catholics. But Crusader Kings begins in the 9th or 11th century, not in the 12th, when Archbishop Reinald bought these relics from Barbarossa. So although Cologne was an important centre of Christianity, even before the bones were transferred to the Cologne Cathedral, the choice of it as a holy site for Catholics by paradox seems a bit premature. However, the importance of the city for Christianity in early medieval Europe should still not be underestimated, because unlike nowadays, Germany was before the Reformation a very important Catholic region. Just like Cologne, the next Catholic holy site is no longer Catholic. It is, of course, Canterbury in the county of Kent, England. It gives all Catholic rulers +5 religious vassal opinion, which is a useful tool for making Catholic realms in general a bit more stable, as well as +10% sway scheme power, further strengthening relations between Catholic rulers. Canterbury is home to the beautiful Canterbury Cathedral, one of the oldest and most famous Christian structures in England. It forms part of a World Heritage Site and is the seat of the Archbishop of Canterbury, who acts as leader of the Church of England and was also the geezer what couldn't fit the crown on Chaz's massive forehead. The church used to contain a relic in the form of the remains of Thomas Becket, also known as St. Thomas of Canterbury or Thomas of London. Thomas Becket had been Archbishop of Canterbury and was best mates with King Henry II. He was his chancellor from 1155, and he even acted as Henry's son's ward, raising and educating him as his own. In 1162, Becket was nominated as Archbishop of Canterbury, a post which Henry believed would benefit him, having his ex-chancellor in the highest clergy position in England. However, their friendship was challenged greatly within the next 8 years, as Becket constantly put faith above the royal court. It reached a breaking point over an issue regarding the rights and privileges of the church against the crown. In a rage, Henry ranted to his knights, in which they misinterpreted his anger as orders to execute Thomas Becket. It is unknown what Henry II said, but historian Simon Schama believes it is something along the lines of this: "What miserable drones and traitors have I nourished and brought up in my household, who let their lord be treated with such shameful contempt by a low-born cleric?" Whatever he said, 4 of his knights made their way straight to Canterbury and murdered the low-born cleric in his very own place of worship, a most dishonourable action that led to the knights' excommunication. After Becket's murder at the cathedral in 1170, Canterbury became one of the most notable European towns of the time, as pilgrims from all parts of Christendom came to visit his shrine. In the 16th century Reformation, that same shrine was destroyed on the orders of Henry VIII and the relics were lost, but the pilgrimage lives on today. The route can still be taken from Winchester to Canterbury, and a newer shrine is now built in the cathedral. We cannot really see why the holy site in the game provides the specific bonuses that it does. Better religious vassal opinion and increased sway scheme power are cool features, but it is unclear what these buffs have to do with Canterbury in particular. In fact, considering Becket's bloody end from the crown, one might expect religious vassals to have a lower opinion of the crown. But if you have any idea, please enlighten us in the comments below. The final Catholic holy site in the game is Santiago in northwestern Spain, reducing the Holy Order high cost for Catholics by 10% and increasing supply duration of a commanded army by 20%. To this day, the city of Santiago de Compostela remains an important place of pilgrimage, with the famous Camino de Santiago leading pilgrims into the city. This famous pilgrimage and the great lengths pilgrims must travel in the sweltering heat are likely what inspired the game developers to make the site increase Catholic armies' supply duration. And the fact that Santiago is lying on the embattled medieval Iberian Peninsula probably is the base for its effect on Holy Order higher costs. The reason why Santiago became a holy site in the first place is that tradition holds that the remains of the apostle Saint James are buried in the cathedral of this city. The Camino de Santiago was established after the discovery of the relics of St. James the Great at the beginning of the 9th century. It became a major pilgrimage route of medieval Christianity from the 10th century onwards. But it was only after the Christian reconquest of Granada in 1492, when Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile finally ended Muslim rule of southern Iberia, that Pope Alexander VI officially declared the Camino de Santiago to be one of the 3 great pilgrimages of Christendom, along with Jerusalem and Rome. These great pilgrimages might sound nowadays like religious formalities, or an excuse for a holiday, but in the Middle Ages they had a significance for nobles and ordinary people alike that is difficult to exaggerate. Christian pilgrimage to Jerusalem began as early as the 4th century, becoming popular immediately following Emperor Constantine's conversion to Christianity. Pilgrimages were first made to sites connected with the birth, life, crucifixion, and resurrection of Jesus. Even from a modern perspective, that's understandable. If you truly believe that an event happened somewhere, the geographical location is essential to that belief. But pilgrimages were also a rare opportunity for people to travel in the Middle Ages. It gave them a reason to see distant places and other parts of the world that they would never have the chance to experience again. So very soon, people began to also visit other places of religious significance, such as the Camino de Santiago we mentioned earlier, or the Via Francigena, which led from Canterbury to Rome via France and northern Italy, and then on to southern Italy. The route was first documented as the Lombard Way in the itinerary of a Bavarian bishop in 725, and the route is still a thing today, as you can see from various signposts in France and Italy along the way. In Crusader Kings 3, until very recently, a pilgrimage was simply a decision you could take from the Decisions tab. It was a simple matter of clicking the decision and then selecting a destination. As a Catholic in Western Europe, you would, for instance, have the choice between Cologne, Rome, Canterbury and Jerusalem, and the further away you would go, the more money you would have to spend on the journey. Afterwards, you'd be presented with a couple of events and choices you would have to make on the way that affected the piety rewards you gain at the end of the pilgrimage. You'd also get the coveted pilgrim trait. But that's about it. These mechanics have changed a bit with the new Tours and Tournaments DLC. First of all, pilgrimages are now found in the Activities tab, rather than in the Decisions as they used to. Additionally, you can now choose between a pious pilgrimage and a worldly pilgrimage. A worldly pilgrimage differs in that it might be slightly more like a holiday. Your character tries to absorb more of the culture of the place they are visiting, taking a longer journey, but encountering more events and choices along the way. Your character's cultural acceptance might change too. You can also choose a pilgrimage intent. Is your pilgrimage for reflection, altruism, or zealotry? This choice further shapes the flavour of events that you will encounter along the way. Furthermore, the choice of pilgrimage that you choose to take will have different buffs depending on where you choose to go. The further away you go, the more respected you'll be by your vassals. And you can choose to take a more contemplative journey too, which takes longer but you'll earn more piety. I guess the rationale behind this is if you spend more time thinking about God, you become a bit more holy. Most importantly, you now have to plan a route that your character actually has to walk on over the map, bringing the geographic dimension into the fascinating dynamics of pilgrimages. If you haven't already, check out the video we have made about how the travel dynamics of the new DLC make Crusader Kings 3 more historically accurate. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe for more history in bits.